The music swelled in the grand hall, laughter rippled through the air, and golden light shimmered across rows of white flowers. It was supposed to be a perfect day, a celebration of love, family, and new beginnings. But as the bride raised her bouquet, ready to toss it toward the crowd, the sound of soft crying broke through the melody. Heads turned. A small boy, no older than 9, stood trembling in the doorway, holding a bundled newborn baby in his arms. His clothes were dirty, his cheeks streaked with dried tears, and his shoes were far too big for his feet. For a long moment, no one moved. The band fell silent. The bride froze mid-motion. The groom, still smiling uncertainly, took a hesitant step forward. And then the boy spoke, his voice cracking but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Please," he said softly. "Can someone help us?" The room's laughter died completely. Hours earlier, the town of Maplewood had woken to sunshine and birdsong. It was one of those small American towns where everyone knew everyone, and weddings were community events. The ceremony of Lily Andrews and Mark Carson had been the talk of the town for months. The local church was decked with white roses, the air filled with the smell of cinnamon from the bakery next door. But while everyone was busy dressing up and preparing for celebration, a young boy named Tommy was wandering the quiet edge of town, clutching something precious against his chest. The newborn girl in his arms whimpered softly, her tiny hands curling into fists. Tommy rocked her the way he'd seen adults do in movies, whispering, "It's okay, I got you." He had found her just an hour before, left alone in a cardboard box behind the old gas station. The note pinned to her blanket was short and smudged with tears, "Please take care of her." "I can't." Tommy didn't understand everything. He was only 9. But he understood enough to know the baby couldn't be left there. It was getting colder, and she was crying so hard it made his own heart hurt. He thought about going home, but his mom was at work at the diner all day, and his dad had been gone for years. He didn't even have a phone. That's when he saw the stream of cars headed toward the church, ribbons tied to their mirrors and horns honking cheerfully. Weddings meant adults, lots of them. Maybe someone there would know what to do. So he walked miles, barefoot most of the way because his shoes kept slipping off. He stopped every few minutes to check if the baby was breathing. He didn't know her name, so he called her Star, because she was small and warm and somehow made him feel less alone. By the time he reached the church, his arms ached and his throat burned from thirst. But when he pushed open those heavy doors and saw all the smiling faces, his hope flickered bright again. The guests stared as Tommy took one shaky step into the hall. His small hands trembled as he adjusted the blanket around the baby's face. The bride's mother gasped. The groom rushed forward, instinctively holding out his arms. "Son," he said gently, "are you okay? What's going on?" Tommy's lip quivered. He tried to speak, but the words tangled in his throat. The bride stepped forward, kneeling down in her white gown, eyes soft and full of concern. "Sweetheart," she said, "is that your sister?" Tommy shook his head. "No, ma'am," he whispered. I found her. Someone left her in a box. I didn't know where to go. I thought," he swallowed hard. "I thought nice people come to weddings." A murmur spread through the crowd. Someone near the back covered their mouth. The priest crossed himself quietly. The bride's eyes filled with tears. Without hesitation, she reached out and lifted the baby gently into her arms. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "You're so brave." The groom looked around at the stunned guests. "Call an ambulance," he said, his voice steady now. "And get some water for the boy." But Tommy shook his head. "She's okay now," he said quickly. "She just needs someone to love her." Then, looking up with a seriousness that didn't belong to a child, he added, "I think she's supposed to be here. I think she was meant to be found today." When the paramedics arrived, the baby was already sleeping peacefully in the bride's arms. They said she was healthy, just a little cold and hungry. The crowd stayed silent as the professionals did their work. Someone handed Tommy a glass of water and a plate of cake, but he didn't eat much. He kept watching the baby, afraid she might wake up and cry again. Lily, the bride, knelt beside him. "You said your name is Tommy, right?" He nodded. She smiled gently. "You know, Tommy, today's supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But I think you just made it mean something even more." He frowned, confused. "How?" Because you reminded everyone here what love really looks like, she said softly. It's not about dresses or flowers or fancy food. It's about caring for someone who can't give you anything back. Her words made several guests cry quietly. Even the priest had to dab at his eyes. After the baby was taken to the hospital for checkups, everyone expected the wedding to end early. But Lily stood before her guests and said, "No. Let's finish this, because love deserves to be celebrated. And today, it's not just ours." When she walked down the aisle again, her hand in Mark's, Tommy sat in the front row, wrapped in a borrowed jacket. The baby's blanket rested in his lap, and he kept tracing its soft edges as if holding onto something sacred. The ceremony resumed, but it felt different now, deeper, quieter. The vows sounded less like promises and more like prayers. When the couple said, "I do," the whole room erupted in applause, but many of the cheers came with tears. At the reception, Tommy sat beside the newlyweds. He didn't say much, just smiled shyly as people came to pat his shoulder or thank him for what he'd done. Someone started a collection for him, cash, gift cards, even toys. But the boy just shook his head. "Can you give it to the baby instead?" he asked. "She needs it more." That simple sentence silenced the room once again. Later that night, after most guests had gone home, Lily and Mark found Tommy asleep on a bench outside the hall, the baby's empty blanket clutched in his hand. They covered him with a shawl, and Lily whispered, "He's got the biggest heart I've ever seen." Mark nodded. He changed something today. In everyone. They didn't know it yet, but the story of the boy and the baby would soon spread far beyond Maplewood. A guest had recorded the moment he walked into the hall, and within days, the video went viral. News anchors called him the little guardian. Strangers sent letters, donations, and offers to adopt both him and the baby. But when asked why he'd done it, Tommy always said the same thing, "Because she was crying, and I couldn't just walk away." Months passed. The baby, now named Hope, was placed in foster care while authorities searched for her biological mother. But Lily and Mark couldn't stop thinking about her, or about the boy who had brought her into their lives. They visited Hope often, and every time, Tommy came along, holding her bottle, making her laugh with silly faces. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the nursery window, Lily turned to her husband. "What if this is our sign?" she said quietly. "What if we're meant to give them both a home?" Mark smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." A year later, the adoption was finalized. Tommy and Hope officially became part of the Carson family. The day the papers were signed, Lily whispered to Tommy, "Remember what you said at our wedding? That she was meant to be found that day." He nodded, eyes shining. "Well," she said softly, hugging him tight, "maybe you were meant to be found too." Years later, that moment still echoed in Maplewood's history, the day a 9-year-old boy walked into a wedding and reminded an entire town what real love looked like. The baby he carried grew into a bright, curious girl who adored her big brother more than anyone. And every year on their parents' anniversary, they'd visit the same church, carrying flowers for the place where their story began. When people asked Tommy about it, he'd just smile and say, "I didn't do anything special. I just listened when someone needed help." But those who had been there knew better. They'd seen it with their own eyes, the way one small act of kindness could turn a celebration into a miracle, and how a lost boy with a newborn baby could teach an entire room full of adults the truest meaning of humanity. Sometimes, the most powerful love stories don't begin with "I do." Sometimes, they begin with "Please, can someone help us?" And when compassion answers, the world changes, one heart at a time.